Hey everyone, and welcome to Cooking Companion TV. I'm Jenna Edwards, and this is a recipe demo of Sicilian-Style Pistachio Cake. It's all nut flour, and it is truly special, so give this video a thumbs up if you like it. I Frankensteined multiple recipes to achieve this gluten-free cake, and it's inspired by Dolce di Franci's Sicilian Pistachio Cake. So let's get right to it. We start by setting out our eggs and butter several hours before baking to come to room temperature. This is so important. Our other ingredients are ground pistachios, rice flour, potato or cornstarch, orange juice, vanilla extract, powdered sugar, and salt. If all that's agreeable, let's continue. Cream together the butter and just the egg yolks. We'll whip the egg whites later. Start beating 6 ounces or 1.5 sticks of unsalted butter that's been softened at room temperature like we just discussed. And this is 4 egg yolks added one at a time to fully incorporate. Add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. This is vanilla paste, which is why I'm looking at the viscosity. It's kind of thick. Notice how the mixer is still going on a speed of 4 or 6 this whole time. Now we need the juice of an orange, or about half of a cup. This orange was labeled as orange juice, and it is really delicious and very juicy. It's not sticky sweet or acidic. You have the option of adding in half an orange of zest, but we aren't really going for an orange flavor in the cake, so it's just perfect without it. The juice helps to brighten up the overall flavor without adding a citrus element. If you only get a 1/4 cup out of your orange, that's also fine. Whatever you squeeze out, save 1 tablespoon for the glaze. Now it's going to look like the juice isn't working into the butter. For a while there, I didn't think it would, but after a solid 5 minutes, maybe longer, suddenly, all of a sudden, it did. Now add in the powdered sugar. We're using 2 cups, and we'll add it in portions so it can fully incorporate before adding more in. It incorporates pretty quickly. Combine our other dry ingredients together. 2 cups of ground pistachio, half a cup of finely ground rice flour, 3 tablespoons of potato or cornstarch, and half a teaspoon of salt. Whisk it together and add it to the cream mixture in a few spoonfuls at a time. Again, it incorporates pretty quickly. Now, I kept the mixer running while I beat the egg whites because I figured it couldn't hurt, maybe even help. Maybe it would break down the nut flour a little more. So you beat your 4 egg whites into soft peaks. Soft peaks looks like it makes a little peak when you pull the beater out, but then the tip falls over, it doesn't hold. On medium speed, this took 2 minutes. This is actually nearly stiff peaks. I went a little longer than the 2 minutes, but I should have stopped at the 2 minutes. So here's our batter, and it's not nearly as dense as I expected with all of the butter and the nut flour in there. It's thick, but it will thin out with the egg whites. So we gently fold in the egg whites, or cut it in, I guess. This technique gives a lightness to the cake. I assume it has something to do with the air bubbles and the structure of the beaten egg whites, keeping the cake, standing up and not collapsing on itself. So to cut it in, as I'm calling it, I don't think that's the proper phrase. I use a silicone spatula and I literally just cut it into the batter with the side. It takes a few minutes, but it works. It's the same way you cut or fold egg whites into angel food cake. We don't stir because we don't want to deflate the egg whites. If you do have the urge to stir, pull the batter off the side of the bowl, push the spatula down to the bottom, and then swiftly flip the bottom of the batter to the top. We don't need to push it back down. And here's the batter fully incorporated. Now, a little known key to gluten-free baking with rice flour is that rice flour is a much harder grain than wheat grain, so it doesn't absorb liquid as quickly. When you're baking with rice flour, it needs to sit for at least 15 minutes before going into the oven. You can mix all this together at night, let it rest in the fridge overnight, and then bake it in the morning. You need a springform pan. This one I think is 9 inches. And as you can see, I have parchment paper in the bottom in case that needed to be the top of my cake. And I used melted butter to grease the sides of the pan and even on top of the parchment paper, because using just melted butter browns the crust of the cake, and I wanted that aesthetic. Now gently spread out the batter evenly. An offset spatula would work well here. Again, you're not looking to push or pack it down, just to even the top out. And you don't bang it on the countertop like you might other cakes to get out the bubbles. We want the tiny egg white foam bubbles to stay. You can gently shimmy it to get the top of the batter to even out if you want. And now it bakes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 175 degrees Celsius for 50 minutes. Check it at 40 minutes, and if it's too brown, cover it with foil for the last 10 minutes or so. It should be a light brown on color on top. As it bakes, it pulls away from the side of the cake and it domed a little bit, but it immediately settled down into a perfectly flat top. Toothpick test shows it is perfectly clean. These wrinkles on the side are where it's settling down from the dome. I don't know how to describe this poking test. It feels really light. It's not really springy. It's not dense. It's actually very light for what I expected of a nut flour cake. So let it cool for 10 minutes before removing it from the pan and flipping it onto the cooling rack. This is the bottom of my cake that I thought I might need to make the top. It looks great, but the actual top also looks great. So I'm going to stick with that. It will cool completely before adding the glaze. Otherwise the glaze will melt right into it. So let's work on that glaze. Remember how you set aside a tablespoon of orange juice? Start with half of it in a small bowl and start adding in a few tablespoons of powdered sugar, whisking it in completely, and add powdered sugar until it reaches your preferred consistency. I wanted it thick enough to be an opaque white on top, but also spreadable until it dried. So I used nearly half a cup of powdered sugar with half a tablespoon of orange juice. And it doesn't taste like orange juice, so don't be afraid of that. I'm going for a specific look with how I'm arranging the glaze for the video and the photos and the overall decorations. Next time, I'll probably double the amount of glaze and just pour it over the top and let it drip over the sides. Now this cake gets better the longer it sits, so make it a day or two in advance and the flavors will really settle in. The texture is like a pound cake. It's not heavy or dense, even though there's a lot of butter and a lot of ground nuts. You can somehow still eat a lot and not feel like a brick in your stomach. So sorry, not sorry. I have a few notes about why I use some particular techniques, so let's get into them. First, room temperature butter and eggs is super important for getting everything to emulsify together. There is no negotiating this. However you like to bake, you always start at room temperature unless it specifically says not to. Second, separating the egg yolks from the whites and beating the egg whites to fold in at the end is a general baking technique for sponge cakes and angel food cake. I've seen it used in other cakes, all the same reason, to keep them light and fluffy. I have not tried not doing this yet, so it's possible that this part adds nothing to the cake and it's completely irrelevant. But maybe one day I'll update you on that. Third, greasing the pan with melted butter to give a brown and crispy edge to the cake will also be just a little upgrade to the whole experience. That's it for this demonstration of gluten-free pistachio cake. Get the ingredient list below or at cookingcompaniontv.com/pistachio cake. Give this video a thumbs up if you like it and subscribe to this channel for more demos just like this. I'm Jenna Edwards and thanks for watching.